One word, FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. The idea that you can quit your job, live off of your saved assets or side job, and finally have complete control over your time. It's not just an idea anymore, it's a movement. Thousands of Americans have bought into this so-called FIRE movement and are retiring from their corporate jobs in their 40s, 30s, and even 20s. Chris did it at 37, Grant retired at 30, Joe and Allie in their 30s, and I even retired at 26, following the lead of people like this. Back in 2021, I joined the FIRE movement by retiring early using income produced from my side hustles and my saved assets. Now, by changing my lifestyle and saving aggressively along with scaling my existing side hustles, I was able to do this all within a 3-year period. Over the past year, I've been putting together a blueprint on how I did this so I can share with you the steps you need to take in order to do the same. This is a complete course exclusively being released here on YouTube, which will cover how you can use my step-by-step method to retire earlier than you would have ever imagined. Again, this course is completely free so I can share it with as many people as possible, so all I ask in return is for you to share it with a friend, like the video, and to put these skills to practice. Now, before we actually go ahead and we get started with this course, I want to start out with some basics and introduction on who I am as well as who this course is actually going to be for. As you can see here, this is this handbook, the blueprint that I keep discussing that will be going through step by step on how I actually went ahead and retired from my side hustles and how you can apply these 5 same steps and you can actually do the same. So I want to start the introduction on who this course is actually going to be for and the audience that I'm speaking to, because I do not want to waste anybody's time. And if you're here just to, get rich quick or find a way to actually just make a lot of money, you're in the wrong place. And I'll be the first one to tell you that you're not going to get that out of this course, which you'll end up finding out. This course is mainly for people who are unfulfilled with their current job. They're looking for something with more meaning, more fulfillment on a day-to-day basis, and they think maybe their side hustle is something they're truly, cliche as it sounds, passionate about, may be the answer to this. I have a quote here, and it's kind of how I felt when I started to really get into my corporate job, is that I was working a job rather than actually living. So majority of my time during the week was spent working or thinking about work, and I felt myself just existing rather than actually having fulfillment in what I was doing. The second is for someone who's looking for more control of their time. This is the main reason why I wanted to actually retire, because I felt a lot of my time actually being drained from my corporate job, and I was missing out on a lot of activities that I wanted to experience in my lifetime. And the more that I looked at it, the higher up that became in that corporate setting, the less time I would actually have to spend with my family and friends. And if I went down that path, I knew it would lead to more corporate success and job success, but it wouldn't lead to, success of being with my family. The next bullet point is for someone who's seeking additional income. An example of that would be to pay off debts. This is something that I use to actually pay off my student loans, my side hustle income, and you can actually go ahead and do the same. This is not what I mentioned earlier. It's not how to get rich quick, how to make a lot of money in a short amount of time. In the long term, yes, maybe. But this is just to maybe if you enjoy your corporate job, but you're looking for just some additional income and the corporate job isn't preparing you for that, you can start a side hustle and work on it a small amount of time and actually generate enough income to accelerate your debt payoff. The last bullet point here is for someone who's aged between 22 and 35 years old, preferably. Now, this is an arbitrary range that I came up with, mainly because during this age, the chances are that you do not have dependents and you might not even be married, so you have a lot more control of your time and you can use that time to grow this side hustle. If you are older than that or even younger, you can still apply these methods, or even if you do have a family, you can still do it, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult than someone who's in their early 20s and just getting started with their career. Next is, what will this course actually teach you? It's going to teach you how to find and start your side hustle, how to improve it, and mainly one of the most important aspects on how to actually scale that side hustle to sustain your lifestyle. I'm going to go into some financial equations, 3 main ones that are very simple, they're not complex, but they are essential to your success in growing your side hustle. And then lastly and simply, I'm going to explain to you how you can retire from your side hustles, how it is possible, and how I did it at 26 step by step. I'll sprinkle in some of my stories from 22 to 26 on how I actually did that. That way I can share my experience. Now, before we get into more of who I am and how I did this, I want to explain what this course will not teach you. As I mentioned before, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. If anyone tells you that they have a way you can retire in 2 months or you can do this and that and make a lot of money, more than likely it's a scam or there's some underlying reason that they are telling you that so you can buy something from them. There's nothing to buy from this course, and this will not teach you how to get rich quick. If anything, it's going to tell you how to get rich slowly. Trust me on that. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution to retirement. This is something that worked for me, and I think it's applicable the way I designed it to actually work for yourself as well. But there may be things that you need to change that I did, or things that I mentioned that should work for you, and they may not end up working. So stay flexible with this solution. This is just one way of doing it. There are multiple ways and different processes to actually achieving this. And then lastly, I'm not going to get into all the retirement advice such as asset planning, investment choices for your 401k or your IRA, or any detailed tax advice. I am not a professional in any of these areas. I will provide my opinions on some of them, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is what you should do based off of my limited experience. Now, what I am a professional in my own opinion on is how to take side hustles, how to create them, how to generate income from them in order to sustain your lifestyle as you see fit. Okay, so now that we've covered who this course is for, what this course will teach you and what it won't teach you, if this is all still applicable to you and what you're trying to achieve, then I think it's best that we get into the introduction of who I am, and then we'll finally get into step-by-step on how to do this all. Now, this is a thumbnail that I took, I think it was in early 2021, when I've actually gone ahead and I retired from my corporate job, and this is the thumbnail to the video that I created. So these are all steps that I've taken. Again, this is the blueprint that I put together on how you can actually go ahead and do this. I want to go through a timeline from when I was age 22 to 26 to give you a better idea of how I became interested in side hustles and my step-by-step progression into what I refer as retirement, which we'll get into here in a second. So when I was 22, I was a normal college student. I was going to Penn State University, and I became interested in something more than just my degree. A couple friends of mine, they were starting a startup, which was called Lines, which is down here. And this was an app that was going to be used to measure the length of bar lines at Penn State. It's something that, the technology really wasn't there at the time, but it was my first introduction of doing something such as a side hustle, startup, entrepreneurship. And it really captivated me because I understood that, I could also do my degree and I could take on a side job such as this. And the opportunity was going to be endless in the long run if I was able to continue doing this when I got my full-time job. And that's exactly what happened. So when I turned 23, I began working in the oil and gas industry. As you can see here, I was a field engineer for this job. And it was really the first time in my life where I had my first full-time job rather than part-time jobs that I had since, I was 13 years old. So this job taught me a lot. It taught me that, I just worked 4 years for this engineering degree, and this is what I thought I truly wanted. But the more and more that I actually worked this job and days went by, I never really gained a sense of fulfillment like I did when I was working on that Lines app in that startup. So it was a reflection point for me to think, I enjoy doing this, but I'm not truly fulfilled when I'm working every single day. So at that point, I still had extra time on my hands. I was able to do it in college at 22. So I thought, what if I actually went ahead and I created a new business or a new side hustle just for entertainment purposes and to gain that fulfillment. So at 24, I created a business called Roads Advertising. And what I would do is I would get Uber drivers to place tablets in the back seat of their car. So when a customer would come in for an Uber ride or a Lyft ride, they would see my tablet there, and I'd be advertising local businesses in Houston. Now, I had some success with this, but at the end of the day, and months later, it ended up failing. There was another competitor that came into the area and basically ran me out of business. But there was so much learning that was involved in this, and even though the income that was produced from it wasn't substantial, what I learned from it was so much more valuable because now I was able to start a side hustle. I was able to manage that side hustle while working my day job full time, and it really introduced a lot of new opportunities to me that, hey, I could do this, and the fulfillment that I gained from doing this and this creation exceeded any fulfillment that I gained from my corporate job. So now I was on the track. I created my first side hustle, although it failed, but it really introduced new side hustles, which I got into when I was 25. So at 25, I started a side hustle on Turo. Turo is a ride-sharing platform where you can actually share your vehicle with someone else and they can rent it from you. Basically, you become an individual car agency for the car that you have or maybe a fleet of cars And what I rented out was I purchased a Polaris Slingshot, which is a three-wheel open air roadster. And I would rent that out in Houston. People would take it down to the beaches in Galveston and all throughout the area. And that was my first real profitable side hustle. And this is the first time that I was actually profiting month over month. And it wasn't just all startup costs that I was losing. So it was my first big realization that, hey, I can actually make money off this. And all that money that I did generate from it, the money that I didn't reinvest back into the business, I was able to use to actually pay off a lot of my debts that I've accumulated throughout college and credit cards. So it was great to have that side income to actually be able to do something with it. And from there, it was so exciting for me to be able to do that, to create my own small little business with my own Polaris Slingshot. So I actually got into selling on Amazon. At this time, I did sell on Amazon years before this, but I really wasn't serious about it. So I started watching a lot of video content on YouTube and took some courses on how to become an Amazon seller and to do all these different forms of arbitrage and wholesaling and private labeling. So at 25, this is when I really started to seriously selling on Amazon. I created some of my own brands for my products that really led to more success. And at this point, I had 2 side hustles now producing income. And the third one, later on that year, I was actually able to purchase my first property, which would ultimately become a rental unit as it is now. And that was another third step of now I have 3 side hustles. I have 3 different incomes in addition to my day job. Now, after starting 3 of these successfully and seeing the income that I was producing by all 3 of these each month, it was actually a little over $1,000 in profit each month. So I started thinking if I could scale these up or if I could introduce new side hustles in addition to these, I could actually do this full time. And anytime that I was working on these, I had such a rush of fulfillment, what I call flow, when you just lose track of time, what's going on. And I knew that deep down, this is exactly what I wanted to be doing with my time and to produce income for my family and myself. So this is when the goal started of if I can actually go ahead and I can produce enough income, I would like to do this and I would like to retire from my corporate job. And so that's exactly what happened. So at age 26, as you can see here, these are my now 7 different side hustles. I've actually just introduced an 8th side hustle, but these are all things that I started when I was 26 in addition to what I did at 25. And this is the income that I was producing in order to be able to retire from my corporate job. At 26, and fortunately, my company was offering a voluntary severance. I saw it as a great opportunity to go ahead and take some extra income from there and to go ahead and try this out to see if I could do it. Now, at the time when I did choose to retire, I think I was making just a little over $3,400 per month, which sustained my lifestyle, and that was my goal. And I was happy with that because I realized, if I took those 40 hours during the week that I put towards my day job, imagine what I could do and grow it if I had all these side hustles and I had all the time to focus on them. So today, it's going on a year since I retired at this point in time of making the video, and now I make just a little over $20,000 in monthly income with these 7 different side hustles and now my 8th that I just introduced. To give you a quick idea of what all this is, these are dividend payments from investments. So a lot of my saved assets, all the money that I made from my side hustles, I just invested all that money and it accumulated over time to produce a nice dividend payment as well as the actual gains that you get each year. The second one here, this is Amazon. This is just the products and brands that I've created on Amazon and I use for my FBA business. Second is my rental properties. Third is ad revenue from YouTube. Thank you for watching the ads in this video. That's the only way that I'll be able to actually do this. Patreon and Fiverr, these are 2 services I provide to mentorship people who are actually looking to start their Amazon store. Fiverr, I find products based on my research techniques for people to sell on Amazon. And then lastly here is affiliate marketing. So with all 7 of these different side hustles, I've now gained my income from $3,400 back in about February, March of 2021 to present day, which will make just a little over $20,000 in total revenue. That is before tax. So it really goes to show, if you put your mind to it and you're able to actually focus on doing these side hustles and put all that time that you were putting into your day job, you're the only one that's going to limit your success financially speaking. So that was the potential that I saw in these. Unfortunately, it ended up working out. And I know if you follow these steps, it can ultimately lead to the same situation, in just a matter of 3 to 4 years. Okay, so now we introduce who I am. I want to get into the course. The first thing I want to discuss is who this gentleman is. His name is Sid Hust. You can see the pun there, right? He's going to be a character for this course. I've always found that scenario-based learning is one of the best ways to actually learn. As you can see, a fictional character go throughout this entire process, and that's what we'll be using him for. I think it's very valuable to see example wise of how something actually progresses and to teach processes rather than just throwing up, hey, here's what I did, or here's what you should be doing. We're going to use him to actually go through step by step the whole way to the very end when Sid can actually go ahead and retire. Now, just a little information about Sid. He loves to draw. That's one of his quote unquote passions. He wants to retire by 30, so he's in his late 20s, let's just say right now. And the main reason why, his motivation, is because he wants to spend more time with his family. He has a daughter and a son, as you can see here. Let's just say he's a single father, so he has limited time to spend with them. A lot of the time they're at daycare or with other family members. So that's very important to him. That's his motivation. The last bullet point, he works at LE Enterprises as an accountant. So that is his professional skill. It may come into play, it may not, but it's something to be aware of. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up this handbook on how you can retire using side hustles. There's a quote as soon as we open this book is that by Catherine Pulsifer, that retirement is a time to enjoy all the things you never had time to do when you worked. This is what retirement means to me. It's not when you're 62 or when you're 65 or possibly when you cash out the 401k the first time. I really believe that you should be enjoying every second of your life and that it should not be postponed until you're in your late 60s because none of that is going to be guaranteed. So a lot of this was my motivation of why I started these side hustles and why I continued to scale and grow them, because I wanted to have control of my time and to use it how I saw fit, all while producing income, because obviously that is very important to sustain a lifestyle. I hope you're excited about this because I know I was, and actually achieving it is something that you can't even imagine, and it's so enjoyable having that freedom of time to do whatever you want and doing something that you enjoy. So the first section that we're going to open up into is our find section, which is finding your side hustle. This is the starting point of the course and where you should start out if you do not know what you want to do. So we're going to go into first, what's the difference between a side hustle and a hobby? Now there's a quote here, hobbies feed our spirits, maybe our passions, and side hustles feed our bank accounts. Now I like to think that side hustles, it's a mixture of a side hustle and a hobby. It's an income producing asset, but it's also a time for you to enjoy what you're doing. So the main difference is that hobbies, you're not going to produce income from them. It's something you enjoy, like golfing, let's just say. But side hustles can actually generate income and also give you that sense of fulfillment in what you're doing. Hobbies, they can become side hustles. So if you are, let's go back to the golfing example, say you become a professional or amateur golfer on the side, that could become a side hustle and you could generate revenue from it, but it's very unlikely, to be frank. Side hustle incomes, they are not passive. You'll hear a lot of people saying, passive income, it's the new future, it's the only way to get rich, it's the only way to retire. Side hustles are not passive. I like to make them as passive as we can to remove yourself from the equation of time and not to put all your time into them to still generate income. So we're going to be focusing on that, but it does require a lot of time, especially early on. So do not be fooled into thinking that this is a passive way of making money or to get rich. Some examples of good side hustles are selling in e-commerce, writing ebooks, affiliate marketing, Airbnb, short-term rentals, or possibly freelancing. We can see a common theme here with the good side hustle examples is that a lot of them are digital. It doesn't require a lot of your time. It's as passive as it can be, although it's not entirely passive. For some bad examples, even though I just mentioned golf, it can become a side hustle. I see all of these as hobbies: golfing, video games, reading, traveling, fishing, hiking. Things that you really enjoy doing, but there's a slim chance that you're going to make income, especially on a daily basis. So, why a side hustle? Why am I not sitting here and say, you should create your own business, you should be doing a startup? The main reason why I think side hustles are so effective because it is manageable with a day job and it still supports your financial freedom and flexibility of your time. Now, it's very risky if you were to go ahead and just say, all right, I'm going to quit my job on day one, and day two, I'm going to start my business, because that's very difficult and it's a lot of risk involved. Side hustles allow you to incubate your business creation over time. So you can start an actual side hustle, which may result in a full-time business. And you can do that every single evening or every weekend while managing your day job. It removes a lot of the risk, the financial risk especially, by going with a side hustle versus just quitting cold turkey and saying, all right, this is it. I'm gonna push myself against the wall and I'm gonna see if I can actually create this startup. That is why I love it, and I think it's a great way and means of producing income without putting yourself out there in a losing situation. And lastly, the right side hustle, it's going to be fun. Sometimes you create businesses because you're focused on the revenue growth or the income that you can generate from it, and you lose track on what actually is fun. For a side hustle, you're not going to continue doing a side hustle with your day job if it's not enjoyable and you have no fun doing it, because that small amount of income that you may make early on isn't going to be significant enough to motivate you throughout the long run. The only time that you'll be motivated to actually pursue that side hustle and to grow into what I hope it to be after this course is if you enjoy it and if it's fun. So let's get into what makes a good side hustle. These examples here, the side hustle examples, what makes them actually good? The first one is that it should be an income producing side hustle and it should be profitable. The second is that you should enjoy it. So some common themes, as we saw on the left side of the page here, you should enjoy it, because if you do not enjoy it, you're not going to have enough motivation to push you through those challenging times to continue growing your side hustle. The third is scalability. Now, what I mean by that is scaling is a way of actually growing your revenue over time as quick as possible and with as little time and investment from yourself. This is very important in order to do this in a quick amount of time to retire. Otherwise, if you have a side hustle that isn't scalable, it's going to take you a long time to grow your business. Okay, lastly, on what makes a good side hustle is that it's not time dependent for you as the owner. Now, what I mean by that, I'll just give you a quick example for my e-commerce products on Amazon. I send all my products to Amazon, and anytime I generate an order or a sale, that order is fulfilled by Amazon. I have nothing to do with it. So it removes me from that equation in the success, which will allow you to really scale that side hustle. If it's a side hustle that requires you to work every hour in order to generate X amount of revenue, you're going to have a much more difficult time because you're the limiting factor and your time is. So just think about those as you're thinking of what your side hustle is, which is what we're going to get into now, which is a quick brainstorming exercise. So there's 4 steps of this exercise, and they're fairly simple. It's really just getting yourself to write down some ideas on a piece of paper, and then we're going to rank them. So step 1, you're going to ask yourself, what do you enjoy doing? And write down those 7 to 10 potential side hustles, on paper or post-it notes. We'll eventually do this with Sid here in a second to get an idea of, what side hustle he's actually going to pursue. Step 2, we'll cross out every side hustle that isn't easily capable of producing income. Step 3, we'll cross out the remaining side hustles that do not align with our personal values, which should play a factor into this. And step 4, we'll rank them based on the most to least scalable side hustle. All right, so again, Sid, he loves to draw. He has 2 children. He wants to spend more time with his family, and he's currently an accountant at LE Enterprises. Just a quick recap. So let's say that Sid went ahead and he wrote down 10 different side hustle ideas. As you can see here, some are babysitting his friends' children, tutoring, accounting to students, virtual assistant, selling his drawings, graphic designer, Uber driver, e-commerce store owner, volunteering, dog walker, and blogging about art. So as you can see, this is a very diverse list, and I'd imagine yours will be too, and that is perfectly fine. So at this point, we're going to move on to step 2, and we have to decide, which one of these are hobbies, which ones are side hustles. In other words, which ones can or cannot produce income. Cross out the ones that have no shot or a very slim shot of producing income. As you can see here, Sid crossed out blogging about art and volunteering. We know that volunteering is not a profitable business structure. And same with blogging about art. He just sees it as, it'd be very slim to actually make money off of that, even though he does enjoy drawing. Step 3 is to take your values and to see which one of these side hustles align to those values. Say you're somebody that really enjoys their time, like myself. I would focus more on like the e-commerce products, or possibly something more digital and online that doesn't require all of my time to be focused on that. If your value is to do something that creates a more sustainable earth, use that here and use that for the ones that do not align with that value that is very important to you. So for Sid, he ends up crossing out tutoring students on accounting because he's an accountant, but he doesn't really like accounting because it's going to lead him down the same path. Rideshare driver, e-commerce owner, and dog walker. Now, dog walker and the Uber driver, that takes away a lot of his time to actually spend with his family because it's dependent on how many hours he actually uses that service and provides that service. That's where the success comes from in that job. For e-commerce, let's just say he has no experience with it, so why would he want to go ahead and do that? Step 4 is the last step before we select our side hustle, and that's scalability. So I want you to go ahead and do is to rank the remaining side hustles. As you can see that we have 4 here left. Rank them on the most scalable meaning that it does not require your time to exponentially grow that revenue in that business. So let's see how Sid ranked them here. As you can see, number 1 is selling his drawings, 2, graphic designer, 3 is a VA, and 4 is babysitting friends' children's. Now, I think the reason why these bottom 3, 2, 3, and 4 are the least scalable in his mind is that because babysitting, it's dependent on your time. Also, he's spending time with other people's kids, not his own. Virtual assistant, again, depending on the hours that you're actually working. And graphic designer, it's similar to that. There may be more opportunities if you were a freelancing graphic designer. You have more control of your time. But Sid, he loves drawing, so it only aligns with his values. And there's also digital ways of possibly, selling your drawings online, such as some online platforms. So he's going to go at this point, and he's going to select selling my drawings because that's the most scalable side hustle that can produce income, and it aligns with his values. So Sid is off to a great start. He found out what his side hustle is going to be. It aligns with his values. It can produce income, but he's still unsure, how is he actually going to sell these drawings? Where is he going to sell them at? How's he going to market them? That is what we're going to be getting into next, which is actually setting up our business and our side hustle. Now on to our second topic, which is the setup phase. This is actually setting up your business, your side hustle. We're going to review how to create a bank account for your business, filing a letter of formation for your business, the whole way to actually creating a business model for your side hustle and ways to improve it later on. So the first question that you might have is, do I actually need a business structure? The simple answer is no, you do not. You'd be known as an individual sole proprietor. This is just you taking on all the personal liability for your business practices as an individual. Now, the reason why you may want a business, and I highly recommend it, is because of the personal liability and conflict of interest protection. So for the personal liability, if you were a sole proprietor and you were to be sued, all of your personal assets, your house, your car, all of that could actually be taken from you or used against you in a court of law. If you have a business set up, that business in most cases would be the entity that would be responsible. So all your personal assets would be protected. So it's a good way to protect that. And then also conflict of interests. Remember, we are working our day job with our side hustle. So say you're an accountant, as Sid is in this example, and he went to tutor accounting. If he were to actually go ahead and teach those students some confidential accounting practices that only LE Enterprises knows and offers, then there may be a conflict of interest because he's using confidential information to benefit himself financially through his side hustle. It's just another way of protecting yourself. That way the business is responsible and liable, not yourself as the individual. Lastly, there are tax advantages. If you have a legal business set up with the federal government, you're going to be introducing yourself to expenses and deductions that you can take, which will substantially reduce your income from your side hustle. So what are some common business entities? What do I use? I personally have a limited liability company that I use for all of my business practices. And then you can actually create smaller LLCs beneath that for individual side hustles if you have more than one. I do recommend that, and we'll get into more details of what this means. S corporation or an S-Corp is a tax status, and C corporation, C-Corp is also a business entity and a tax status. Now, there is a great chart that I found here, which I'll show you guys, which really covers the main differences as well as some characteristics about a sole proprietorship, LLC, and an S-Corp. So it protects you from business debt and liabilities. Remember, the sole proprietorship does not. You are personally liable. LLC, S-Corp, they also do that. C-Corp, it's mainly for larger corporations. We'll get into why you may want to do that later on. But for now, I think you should really be deciding between LLC or an S-Corp if it's just yourself creating the side hustle. You are responsible for self-employment tax. Are there restrictions on your salary? S-Corp, there are. LLC, there is not. In an S-Corp, you're paying yourself a salary versus an LLC, you might actually just go ahead and pay yourself all of the profits and they get passed through you through that tax structure. Admin difficulty, there's just a lot more paperwork to maintain, and especially the creation for an S-Corp versus LLC. And an S-Corp is going to be a little bit more expensive versus an LLC. So some things to keep in mind as you're trying to figure out, what is going to be the best tax structure and business entity for yourself. So looking at these tax structures, again, consult with a lawyer before you get into any details behind these. These are just, my opinion, some information that I'm aware of. That is all that this information is. For an LLC and an S-Corp, it can pass through you as ordinary income. S-Corp also allows you to pay yourself a salary. There's different ways you can go about that. But really all the income comes through the entity and it gets passed through you. So you file it on your federal tax income return at the end of the year. It's just like you made extra money on top of your day job. A C Corp is mainly for larger corporations. If you have hundreds of people working for you, maybe you may actually go ahead and convert to a C Corp. I really don't think that this is applicable to anybody just starting out. Again, it's great for large companies. They get taxed at the corporate tax rate, and you can get paid a salary through that. I think for you, determine if you want to be an LLC or an S-Corp and how you want to be taxed. Again, reach out to your lawyer or your accountant for expert tax advice and legal advice. Okay, and lastly, just to cover the naming of your business, when you're deciding a name, think about what that business is and relate it back to what you're actually doing. If you're selling cars or something along those lines, you're becoming a small dealer in car sales. You want to make sure that your business actually makes sense and it's not just like Green Eggs and Ham LLC, because that really has no value. And then the second bullet point here is to file a letter of formation, which covers your name of your business, a lot of information about you, your business address, a lot of applicable information that will be very important to file a legal business in your state. This will vary between $50 to $300 depending on your state and how much it costs. I think for me in Texas, when I created mine, I think it was $250. I know some states like Montana it's cheaper, Idaho and all those states up there. So let's say for Sid, he went ahead and he created a business structure of an LLC and he named it Draw Dropping Drawings. It's a play on words there, but it tells the customer, what it is that his business is going to be doing and what it offers them. Now, once you've created your business structure or you've gone ahead and say, hey, I'm going to accept the liability and I'll be a sole proprietor, I recommend creating a separate bank account for your business or your side hustle. So that's what we're going to be talking about now. There's just some tips, 4 quick tips on what I recommend doing when you're creating a bank account. Now, the main reason why you want to do this is to separate your personal income from your side hustle income. This makes it very easy whenever you're accounting and you're tracking your income and your expenses to have just one bank account for one side hustle or even multiple side hustles. That's better than combining everything into one bank account, your checking account, which will convolute things and make it very difficult. So that's the main motivation behind creating a separate bank account, is to separate your incomes. And then it also allows you to be more professional in the eyes of customers. So whenever a customer pays you, let's say they're paying you directly via check, when they write the name on the check, it's not going to be your name, it's going to be this business. And it's just a much more credible way of doing business. Now, the third thing is to go with a mid-sized bank. Unfortunately, I went ahead with a very large bank that is nationally known, I think even globally known. And I feel like, at times I'm treated like a number rather than having a personal relationship with that bank, especially when I go to look for a business loan. It makes it much more difficult than having someone to talk to. Now, the problem with very small banks is, there's more risk involved with that actual bank. And then also, they may not have as many opportunities for loans and different other programs they can offer you as a business. So the mid-size is what I'd recommend in hindsight looking back. And that all ties into your relationship. You may eventually want to get a loan to increase, growth in your business, and being able to talk to somebody at the bank who offers a good amount of programs and loans, it's only going to work to your favor. So take these 4 tips of advice into consideration when you're creating your bank account. More than likely, you're going to need your business set up, your letter of formation from your state in order to even have a business bank account. So make sure you do that first before getting to this step. Okay, now we're going to get into the business model, and I really just want to ask you some questions and get you brainstorming, how this is all going to fit in together and work. And then we're going to get into Sid and his business model and exactly what it entails. How is he actually going to sell his drawings? So for products and services offered, what value are you providing to your customers? That's a question to ask yourself, because that is exactly what you're selling. You're selling that value, whatever it is, if it's a product or a service. Your target audience, think about who's it going to be for. It should not just be for the general public, anybody. You should know exactly your customer, what interest he or she has, and it's just going to help you market better and also help you understand the people that are going to buy your product or your service. Now, with creating businesses, sometimes you actually create an operating agreement if you have more than one member in that business. This really ties into these questions here. Your operating model. How and where will your side hustle operate? How will people find out about your product service? Are you going to be advertising? Are you going to use a known brand that you've been using your whole life for some side hustle, and you're just going to continue growing that? Questions to ask yourself, how is that actually going to operate? How are you going to make money from it? Competition, there's always competition, whether that's direct or indirect. Know who those competitors are, know what they're currently doing in your market, and understand how you're going to compete and beat them, especially in the long term. Last two here, startup costs. Do you need any money to launch? Do you need to purchase equipment, retail space, whatever it is? Outline that up front so you understand what you're going to be getting yourself into. And then cash flow, think about your profits. Later on, it's okay to use those profits as wages to sustain your lifestyle, which we'll get into. But maybe early on, you're going to be reinvesting those profits back into the business because you have your day job to rely on for financial income. Okay, so a bunch of different questions here to really think about. Take your time with this. It doesn't have to be a one-time thing. You're going to be changing this over time, especially as you progress with growth on your side hustle. So let's take a look at Sid's on here on the right. So I'm going to go through step by step kind of what Sid's business model and his operating model looks like and how he's actually going to execute this side hustle. So the first one up here is the clock. So Sid, again, this is all hypothetical, but Sid is going to be working on the evenings whenever he has free time. So his day job obviously is his priority, but whenever he has some free time in the evenings, maybe an hour or two, that's when he'll actually go ahead and create these drawings here. So he plans to create 2 drawings up front per week, and that way, it's enough that he can do within a week's time, and it also provides him, 2 drawings to sell wherever that ends up being. Now, Sid plans to sell these drawings and target an audience of people who are willing to spend an extra $1 on luxury drawings. So he's going to make his drawings much more elegant than he normally would. That way he can sell them at a higher dollar value, and this will be his target audience. He plans to use the local newspaper for his town to advertise where he's going to be selling these at, to get people excited about his business and for overall brand awareness. Now, there is a local market in town that sells different products and crafts every Saturday morning. So Sid sees this as a great opportunity to begin selling his drawings, and potentially expand later on down the road. And this is how he's actually going to be getting paid. So all his transactions will come through this marketplace every Saturday. So at this point, Sid knows that, again, as I just recapped, he's going to be selling his drawings at the local market on Saturdays, using advertisements in newspaper for marketing. He's created his LLC. He's going to open a bank account at a mid-sized bank in town. So unfortunately, since he's very small at this point and he's selling at a local market, he's only going to allow cash-only transactions, work evenings during the week, as I mentioned, and then he'll plan to reinvest all his profits back into the business for growth since he has his day job. Now, you may be taking a look at these bullet points, and you may see some inefficiencies if you're more experienced with side hustles or business creation, and that's perfectly fine because that's what you should be doing. When you list out your bullet points like this and really think about your process, your model, start to look at that. Where can you improve? And that is what's going to transition us into our next topic, which is actually improving and scaling our existing model. Okay, at this point, we'll continue with Sid's scenario. He started his side hustle at this point. He's gone into it for over a month, and he's now reflecting on how things have progressed. So again, Sid creates 2 drawings per week to sell. That has not changed. That's what he did for those 4 weeks of that first month. And then he ended up finding out that a majority of customers, they didn't even see that newspaper advertisement. So his return on investment, it really wasn't that great because no one actually saw that ended up coming to his booth at the market. Okay, and the third thing here is that Sid is actually losing customers on a weekly basis because they only have credit or debit. Unfortunately, he only has access to cash-only transactions at this moment, so he's losing a lot of customers who may be interested in purchasing one of his drawings, but they're unable to do so on that day. A couple other things is it's difficult to manage his time he's seeing, between family, his day job, and side hustle. It's very difficult to manage that without a routine schedule. And lastly, unfortunately, after the first month, he's seeing that his business, it's at a loss, and his growth is limited. So as you can see, this hypothetical chart down here for his profit and loss for the first 5 months, he's forecasting that, there is improvement. He's going to be able to sell more drawings as people become more exposed that he's there. But unfortunately, he's not going to be at a profit for a long time by the looks of this. And that is really going to be something that he needs to improve because he wants to retire in the next year or so. And if you can't profit with your side hustle, you're going to be unable to actually retire off of that lack of income produced. So now we're going to get into improving this. Let's see how we can improve Sid's existing process and make it more tangible and also more scalable. That way it's much easier to make money quicker. So I'm going to be introducing a continuous improvement methodology. For those of you who are unaware, it's a process improvement technique that aims to eliminate weak points, or what are known as bottlenecks in a business operation. So really those weak points, such as the cash-only transactions that are limiting him, unable to manage his time. These are all weak points that Sid can see as opportunities rather than just some bottlenecks in the process that there's no way of changing. It's a 4-step process. It really works to identify the issue, plan it out, execute the solution that you planned, and then review and reflect on how everything went. So ask yourself the question after you've created your business model. Maybe if you've started your side hustle for a couple months at this point, or a couple weeks, what areas of your side hustle are you seeing that are limited by your time, or possibly you can improve to get to a quicker revenue growth or to reduce costs. Going back to Sid's business model, there are some obvious problems here. If you have a keen eye of understanding, this is definitely not the most efficient way. Now that we understand the first month takeaways, the reflection that Sid provided us, let's see if we can decipher where the bottlenecks are and how we can actually improve them. So let's just start out with the first one. It was the time. Remember, he's working during the evenings whenever he has time. He does not have a set schedule, and he's finding it hard to manage that time with his family and his day job. So that is the identify, is that he's struggling to manage time. How can he improve that? So what he can do is he can work a routine schedule, which he set up Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the evenings for 2 hours. This is great because he knows exactly when he's going to be working on it. He can track his progress throughout the week, Monday, Wednesday, and then maybe not even have to work Friday. And then he can also let his family know, hey, I'm working for 2 hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is my focus time. Rather than, I have a spare 30 minutes here, let's work on that. And, he's unable to really focus. The second one are the drawings. So Sid only produces 2 drawings per week. And as you might imagine, he's very limited, on his sales. Imagine if he had 10 different customers and only 2 drawings. Yeah, he could have a bidding war for those 2 drawings, but his revenue is going to be capped because, it's all limited on how many he can create in a week's time. So what can he do? I would recommend, basically pivoting from what he's currently doing. What if he created a print rather than just handmade drawings? And then instead of selling to a very luxury audience at a very high sales price, he could reduce that sales price. And if he's able to sell more drawings based off of these prints at a lower sales price, he still might be able to make more revenue. And it's a better scalable method than just producing 2 drawings per week, which is going to be the same for his entire life unless he's able to hire people to create more drawings. Next are the customers and the marketing effort that he put into place. Remember, the customers, they told him at the market, hey, we actually never seen your advertisement in the newspaper. Whether that's because it's an ineffective advertisement or maybe it's not even making the correct portion of the paper, we don't know, but we know that it's not effective. So, Sid talks to one of his coworkers and he finds out that you can advertise on social media. So Sid's going to convert his marketing strategy to digital advertising, where he can actually target specific audiences, specific demographics, a lot of different interesting techniques that he can apply by becoming a little bit uncomfortable and learning something new. And lastly, I would say the second main issue is that he's just not producing enough sales, enough revenue. That is limited by the number of drawings that he can sell per week, but it's also the marketplace that he's at. So he begins to think, maybe if I expand to an online business, it'd really help me out, like a platform like Etsy, which is a great platform for people to sell DIY stuff, crafts, drawings, artwork. So he begins to think that might be a better option for him. And that way he can introduce his product, his drawing, to a global audience, which will ultimately expand his business. And let's not forget, by using an online platform like Etsy, he'll be able to accept cashless payments. So this improves a lot of the process. And so after identifying all those issues, planning them out, which is shown here in green, it's time to execute those and to review how they actually performed. Again, this is all part of the continuous improvement cycle. So running through the improved process now, he's going to be working Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the evenings for 2 hours consistently. He's going to be using a printing press to create prints of 1 drawing that he makes per week. He'll sell them at a lesser price as a result. Still target the similar audience, but now he's introducing himself to a global audience using the Etsy platform. He'll use social media advertising for his marketing strategy, use Etsy for all the transactions, marketing, and so forth to fulfill orders. And then he'll use Etsy to perform all transactions and fulfill all the products, the drawings on the behalf of his business. So after we've improved this process, it's time to execute and review to see how it went. So looking at the results up here, Sid now has more time to spend freely since he has a set schedule in addition to his day job. Again, his family knows when he's going to be working. He knows when he's going to be working. So he can set time aside for family and to spend with them. The Etsy platform, there's a lot of other great online platforms that he could have used for this, but this is a good platform that will really allow him to expand his business. And again, it will allow for those cashless transactions. All pain points and bottlenecks that he previously had solved by using this new platform. Reflecting on the social media advertising, after doing this for a month, he's found out that it has brought in 8 times the amount of customers. He can now track conversions online rather than just relying on the input that a customer gives him and says, hey, did you see my ad in the newspaper? Yes or no. He can now see, all right, using this keyword or using this product to target, I now know that I can bring in X amount of customers, which will really allow him to scale his business. And then lastly, his business, it's going to require startup costs now, for example, the printing press. But the main point is that he's expected to be profitable now by the time it comes to May. So he's really improved his overall business. He set himself up to scale his business much quicker, and he's now becoming profitable, which is the aim of any business, especially early on. Now, I'm not going to be going into all these bullet points again, but as you can see in red, these are the improvements that we made to the summary that we took a look at the end of the setup phase. So think about for yourself and your business, find and identify those pain points, those weak points in your business structure and your model, plan of how to actually improve them and solve those issues, execute that solution, and always review to see how it went. You may actually get to the review cycle and the continuous improvement and find out that this solution actually hurt my business more, and that's totally fine. That's part of the learning process. Not every improvement is going to be a dramatic improvement, so keep that in mind and continue using this continuous improvement cycle until you scale your business exponentially. All right, so I hope you're really enjoying this course so far. I want to take a quick minute just to reflect on what we've learned so that way it stays fresh in your mind as we continue on with this course. Now, these are some expert tips that I would find very useful between the find and the improve steps that we've covered so far. Now, the first one is to deliver as much value in as short as time as possible. Now, this has always been my secret when I started my side hustles and when I was looking to scale them, is that I was not just delivering my time for a service or was delivering a product in my Amazon store. I was delivering as much value as I could in as short a time as possible. Now, what that does for you, it allows you to really scale your revenue growth because instead of focusing on something that's limited and finite like your time, now you're focused on something that is infinite and it's not relying just on your time. So if you focus on that for all of your side hustles and you deliver that value with as little of your personal time as possible, you're going to have a lot of growth for revenue. Now on to the second point, which is very similar to the first. Do not trade hours for money. Now, this type of thinking is very common amongst wage earners, as if I work 8 more hours, I can make X amount of more dollars. That gets you in a finite period of time where you can only make so much based on the amount of time that you're putting into that work. So if you change your way of thinking and you begin to trade value instead of hours for money, it's going to work out in your favor in the long run. Our third one is about the continuous improvement cycle that we discussed. Know that this is never ending. Even 3 years after a side hustle is made, you are still using that cycle to improve bits and pieces of your process for your business cycle. Now, it's important that you continue to apply this. That way you continue to grow and scale your business rather than becoming complacent and having the same amount of orders or the same amount of people working for you. You can really allow yourself to grow. The next one is to start out with realistic goals. I know a lot of people that I worked with in our Patreon mentorship group, they set these unrealistic goals at the very beginning, such as making $10,000 in sales their first month. Unfortunately, you need to be realistic and it's very hard to attain that level of success that early on. If you set goals that are realistic and achievable, you're going to set yourself up to succeed. That way you continue tackling those goals one after another rather than becoming discouraged based on an unrealistic goal. Next is to reinvest your profits, especially early on in your side hustle. Now, the reason why you want to do this is to compoundly grow your revenue and your overall growth of your side hustle. In addition, another reason why you want to do this is because you have your day job, you have income coming in to support your lifestyle, so it is the best time to continue pumping that money back into the business. Later on, you can become more dependent on those profits to be used as your earnings for your own personal income, but early on, when you do have that day job, it's best to put them back into the business. All right, we're going to take a look at the last two together, and it's okay to switch side hustles, and being uncomfortable is good. Now, just because you started a side hustle and you believed it to be the most scalable side hustle based on our rankings earlier, if you later find out that you do not enjoy that side hustle, or maybe the revenue growth is not going to be there, it's okay to pause, reflect, and pivot to a new side hustle. This is very common in startup culture to pivot once they realize that the area of opportunity isn't necessarily there. And lastly, being uncomfortable, it's good. It's a good feeling. It's something that any business owner, any side hustle owner, any entrepreneur actually goes through. And if you're not uncomfortable, that means you're not growing. So it may be cliche for you to hear this, but being uncomfortable is going to be good, and it's going to lead you to that further success down the road. All right, let's jump on to our next section, which is the finances of our side hustle. So go ahead, practice and apply those expert tips when you're finding, setting up, and improving your side hustle. Next, we're going to be talking about the finances. We're going to be covering just basically very, very basic level understanding of some financial equations, as well as some key characteristics of things that you should be aware of, such as the first one here, which is revenue. These are basic terms that I imagine most of you know, but I think applying these to some equations and actually practicing them on your business, it's going to help your business grow significantly in the long term. And so revenue, simply put, you can read this definition, but simply put, it's any income, any cash, or any credit that's coming into your business before any deductions or taxes. With that being said, expenses are the outflow of any money. So think of revenue as an inflow of money coming into the business. Expenses are the outflow. For our course here, we'll say that expenses also includes your taxes. So any money that's going to be paid for income tax through income earned by your side hustle. Which brings us into our first main equation, which is net income, which is the inflow minus the outflow, or in other words, revenue minus expenses. Net income is what you're left with. It's your profits. It's after all taxes. It's the money that you're going to be left with. This is the amount of money that we're going to be producing in order to meet our lifestyle goal later on. And it's what we should be focused on generating to get to our target so we can go ahead and retire. Now, I highly recommend tracking all of your income, your expenses, and all of your revenue in some manner. Now, as you can see here, here's just kind of a flow chart of how income comes into Sid's business. So income will come in through those transactions on Etsy. After that, he can either decide to reinvest a portion of that money. He might have someone working for him or a virtual assistant where he needs to pay someone wages. And then also he's going to be tracking his expenses because some of that income is going to be used to pay off bills for his side hustle. Now, I recommend tracking all of this using a simple Excel spreadsheet, which I've used for my own business and throughout all my side hustles. And to this day, it's still one of the common practices that I use. But as I grew and grew my side hustles up to 7 to 8 side hustles, I began to use QuickBooks. This is not an affiliate marketing effort on my behalf, but it is a great tool that you can go ahead and use to track all of your expenses. Now, if you have one side hustle and you're the only member of that business for that side hustle, I think you can track everything, your income and your expenses, all in one spreadsheet, month by month. Just make sure you do that consistently. Okay, and the last item that I want to talk about here is your profit margin. This is a key metric on how profitable your business is. Obviously, you want your business to be as profitable as it can. That way you can go ahead and make more money. And it just means that your business is efficiently operating as best as it can. Higher the percentage, the better. This is going to be a percentage that we take a look at. Now, the average profit margin within the United States for all businesses throughout all industries is 7.71%, which is pretty low if you think about it. There's a lot of different industries, such as e-commerce, where anything over 30% is typically a general good profit margin. And then you also have, some industries that are lower producing in terms of their margin, which are below 7%. But this is what the average is. So our goal, I would say, this is a number that I formulated based off of my experience, is that you want at least 30% for any side hustle. Now, the main reason why I'm not saying, just shoot for above the average, which is 7, is because more than likely you're going to be an individual. That 7.71% is based off of companies that have hundreds of employees working for them and are making millions of dollars in sales each year and have millions and millions of volume of sales. So for you as an individual, you're a one-man or one-woman team. You're not going to be able to generate $1 million in sales your first year, just as one person. It's just, the odds are against you. So if you're able to shoot for a higher margin per sale, knowing that you'll have a less amount of volume of sales versus a large company, you're going to be better off and you're going to actually be able to achieve some of your goals for your income. So that's why I say shoot for at least 30%. And one last thing, what does 30% actually correlate to? What does it mean? For every $1 that Sid sells a drawing for, he keeps 30 cents as profit. It's the amount of profit that you keep per hour or per product that you sell. So looking at the actual equation for profit margin, it equates to your net income, which is that equation right above, your revenue minus expenses, and that's all divided by your total revenue generated. And that's all, it's a percentage that's all multiplied by 100. Again, higher the profit margin, which we'll shoot for, the better. Let's try to get at least 30% since we're an individual and we're not going to be able to achieve, millions of sales at a low margin. Let's put this to practice now and let's figure out what your profit margin is at this point in your side hustle. Step one, and we're going to go through this in a very simple process, is to calculate your revenue per sale, or if you're providing a service, per hour serviced. After that, we'll go ahead and calculate your total expenses. This is everything that you need to make 1 unit of your product or to service for 1 hour. For example, for the service, I know that's a little bit more difficult to correlate profit margin to, but let's say that you mow lawns as your side hustle. In 1 hour of cutting lawns, you can make $40. What are your total costs in generating that $40? Obviously, maintenance for your equipment, gas for all of your equipment. Maybe you have one person working for you, so their wage. Those are your expenses. Here, COGS is your cost of goods sold, or it's how much money it actually takes to create a drawing, such as Sid's example here. Marketing, utilities, taxes, wages, and so forth. Anything that requires you to take money out of your business is going to be an expense. Step 3 is to apply the net income equation, and that's revenue minus expenses. So what I want you to do is to take your revenue over a period of time, take your expenses over a period of time. Again, this could be an hour, could be a day, could be a month, whatever you want it to be, and to subtract that. That will give you your net income. Once you have your net income and you know your revenue, you can create your profit margin and figure out what that is. Your net income divided by revenue, all multiplied by 100. So after you do that, figure out what percentage your profit margin is at for your hour serviced or per sale. If it's below 30%, I highly recommend to reduce your expenses first instead of just looking to increase your overall revenue. And I recommend doing this because in my experience, it's been much easier to go ahead and reduce those expenses rather than just focus on, all right, I need to make more sales or I need to work more hours. It's just an easier way, an easier approach. And then if that doesn't work, you can actually go ahead and look to grow your revenue because that obviously is a contributing factor here. Some common examples of actually reducing your expenses is if there's a product or material that you're purchasing, try to purchase that in bulk. It's going to require more upfront risk, financial risk, because you're purchasing more upfront, expecting to sell that amount, but you'll get a better unit rate, which will ultimately reduce your expenses or your cost of goods sold. Second, use a platform with less fees. So Sid might go ahead, he might start using Etsy and realize that they take 10 to 15% or possibly even 20% on some other platforms. Maybe he could actually pivot to a different platform that still allows him to make his sales for his drawings, but it's not going to take as much of a cut. Similar to purchasing in bulk, another thing that you can do if you're selling a product is to substitute the materials. Maybe there's a different type of plastic or an organic material that you could use to increase your sales price and to decrease your expenses. It's all entirely possible, and things that should always be going through your head if you're below this 30% margin. Lastly, efficiency, gain in production. Say that you are creating things, you are your own supplier. Think about different ways that you can improve that process and you become more efficient with your time. Because the less time that requires you to make one sale, the more that it's going to yield your profit margin. And lastly, if you're equal to or above that 30% mark that I set for us, celebrate. That is great news. You're off to a great start. And later on, you can apply these steps right above to reduce your expenses and to even gain that profit margin higher. But as a stepping stone and at a starting point, if you're above 30%, great, we can move on knowing that you're able to make a substantial amount of money per $1 of sale. Now let's go ahead, let's apply those same 4 steps to Sid and see what his profit margin is to see if he's actually going to be profitable per drawing that he sells. So let's say that Sid is going to be selling that one drawing. Again, these are the prints. They're not just the professional drawing that he created by hand. He's going to sell one of these prints at $89.99 per sale. So that's going to be his total revenue. If he makes 10 sales, just multiply 10 times 89.99, you're gonna get $899, and that is gonna be his revenue. Very simple to understand there. Step 2 is the expenses. A little bit more complex here. It involves a little bit more thinking and tracking to decide, how much does it actually cost me to create one of these drawings to convert one sale? This includes everything from the canvas to the frame, the printing ink, all the fees and taxes that go into it, any advertising and marketing efforts that he applies, and then also the shipping and the fulfillment mechanism, because he actually has to fulfill every order and he has to ship those out, which requires material. So after adding all of that up, he decided that this comes out to $52.46 per sale. So you can come up with your net income. How much does he profit per sale? Take your revenue, subtract it by the expenses, as we can see here, and he gets $37.53 per sale. That is a pretty good number. He's making almost $40 off of a one drawing when all he has to do is create that one drawing and print it out. So it's really just a game of reducing your expenses in order to get a better profit margin if he wants to increase that. So let's go ahead and figure out what his profit margin is. Again, take your net income divided by your overall revenue per sale. That's $37.53 divided by $89.99, all multiplied by 100 to get your percentage of 41.7%. This is Sid's profit margin, and this means that Sid gets to keep 42 cents of every dollar that his business makes. Rounding up, a 42% profit margin is excellent. That's above our goal of 30%. So if I were Sid, I'd be happy with this. This is a great start, and hopefully he can only improve it over time and get it closer maybe to 50%, which is exceptional. All right, and we'll tackle one last equation here. For those of you who do not love math, I fortunately do. I try to keep this as simple as possible, but for those of you who do not love math, I hope these are not too complex. And the value that they provide you in your business will really help out, especially this equation here, which is our ROI, or our return on investment. This equation here is used by all businesses to determine, how efficient is an investment that they're putting money into. Every business that I'm aware of is going to be using this equation in one way or another. So a high ROI, which is going to be a percentage, which we'll end up seeing here, is very favorable. It means that the investment is very efficient in what it's trying to do. And a low ROI is the exact opposite. It's very costly. It's not generating enough income. It's inefficient. So now what I use this mainly for my business is a great comparison tool to judge whether or not an investment, especially for marketing, which we'll see here, if it's a good investment or if it's a bad investment. And it also allows you to compare the two. Say you did two different investments, which one is going to be better for your business? So let's take a look at Sid's ad campaign. Remember, he was advertising in the local newspaper, then he went to social media. So let's say that he's advertising specifically on Facebook to an audience that is the same as the audience that he's trying to sell these drawings to. For example, let's say that in 1 week's time, he spent $250 trying to generate ad revenue. As a result, he was able to sell 15 drawings. And remember, our profit per drawing for Sid is $37.53. We'll multiply that by 15 because that's the number of drawings that he sold to get a total profit of $563. And that is how much Sid actually made off of this ad campaign. Now this $563, this is the profit before his ad spend. We're not including that in here, but what we're going to do is to determine, this as an investment in marketing, was it actually efficient? So we'll take our ROI equation, our net income, remember, is our profit. That was $563, and then we're going to divide that by our investment, the cost of the investment, which was how much we spent in advertising. That comes out to be $250 from the above example, and we'll multiply that all by 100. That gives us a percentage of 225%, which is great. What this 225% means is that as we invest $1 into our ad spend, hypothetically, we should yield $2.25 every single time. Now, that's not going to happen every time, but this gives you a good idea of how much you can make a return on. So that's good news. Sid knows that this is a very efficient advertising campaign, but he's also heard that, Instagram could be also another outlet where he could advertise in addition or as a substitute to Facebook advertising. So Sid goes ahead, he tries out Instagram advertising, and he wants to limit it, so he only spends $100 in a 1 week's time. So the same amount of time as Facebook, and he was only able to convert 8 drawings for sales. Now, you may look at this and say, he spent less and only made 8 drawings, but he made 15 before. Obviously, the Facebook campaign's a better investment. Now, hold on, look at this. So let's take a look at our net income, which is our profit multiplied by the number of drawings. That comes out to $300. Applying the ROI equation, take $300, which is the net income, the profit, divide that by the cost of investment, which is $100, multiply by 100, and you're going to get 300%. As we said before, this 300% means that for every $1 that Sid places into Instagram advertising, he's going to make $3 as a result. Now, here's where the beauty comes of it is the comparison tool, which I always use this for a lot of my marketing campaigns and any type of investment that I plan to use in my business. So looking at this, we know that Instagram yields a 300% ROI, Facebook yields a 225% ROI. This would tell me that I can generate more money using this marketing technique because it yields a better percentage in my ROI. I use this all the time in my business to understand which investments are better than the others. Use this to mainly compare different type of investments that you plan to put in your business, and then always track to see how much you made off of that investment. So these are some beginner tools, beginner equations that you can use to track a lot of your income, which are going to be very valuable as we get into our final chapter here, which is to retire. Okay, so let's take a 15-minute break. I can understand that the finances and using equations, if you haven't in a long time, it can be a lot to digest at one sitting. So let's take a break and we'll come back and look at the expert tips for the finances. So the first tip that I want to convey to you is that do not sacrifice quality for profit. Now, a lot of greedy business owners and side hustle owners will mainly focus on that growth of the revenue, and they'll start to take shortcuts, which will ultimately lead to a backlash of the business. Now, for my business on Amazon, if I were to do this and I were just to focus on my profits, my margins, rather than actually a quality product from my supplier, it would ultimately lead to returns, which would ultimately lead to a loss in profit for me. So do not sacrifice quality at the expense of gaining more profit. Second, track all of your business expenses each month. I actually have a spreadsheet where I track every single business expense along with the receipt. I either file it in a filing cabinet or electronically each and every month. I do this because it allows you to stay on top of it rather than waiting to the very end when it becomes tax season, such as this time of the year, and you're looking to find all those receipts and all those different expenses, because more times than not, you're going to forget many if you do not track it each month. Third, reduce your expenses before looking to increase your revenue. I found along with my side hustles that it's much easier to actually go ahead and cut expenses, cut costs in your business, rather than just thinking, all right, my costs are what they are, they're fixed. I just need to grow my business more and I need to gain more revenue by making more sales or servicing more hours. It's a lot easier. Start it with the revenue, and then if you have to, go ahead later on and focus on that growth in revenue. As we saw previously, the return on investment equation really allows you to understand and compare different investment options. I use it all the time for my marketing efforts, for advertising, to understand, which advertising campaign was actually a better investment on my part. You can use this on multiple products or services that you're providing to really understand, what is the best area for revenue and the most efficient method for that investment. And the last bullet point that I know no one is actually excited about is that do not forget to track your sales and your income tax at the federal and state level if it's applicable to you. This is something that I track each month, and I set a percentage of my income aside in a bank account, and then I pay estimated taxes every quarter. It's much easier to do that, again, rather than putting all the money in your account, spending it as you see fit, or reinvesting it, and then waiting until the end of the year and realizing that, hey, I owe $20,000 in taxes. What am I going to do? It's much easier and much more efficient to do it this way. Okay, let's get on to our final chapter, which is the most exciting one, and that is actually retiring. All right, and on to the final chapter here. This chapter is really going to be covering, when can you retire, how can you retire, and the steps that you need to take. Now that you've created your side hustle, you started generating income from it, you've improved it, and you have all these tools, such as those financial equations, to really benefit you. Now, the easiest way to retire is to change your lifestyle. Now, I know many of you might hear this and say, no, there's no way I'm going to change my lifestyle. I love it how it is. And that's fine. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult. Just bear with me. Hear this out. I know that you can decrease your financial lifestyle to a degree, and it's going to make it all that much easier. There's a quote here by Charles C. Noble that says, "First we make our habits, then our habits make us." What this quote really means is that we are in full control of our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is based off of a series of habits and decisions that we've made and then we continue throughout our life. Eventually, if we have bad habits, those bad habits are going to make us into who we are, and vice versa. If we have good habits, financially speaking, they're going to make us into who we are as well. So the question you might have after thinking about this or thinking about this chapter up and coming is, when can I actually retire? The most simple way that I can put this of when you can retire from your side hustle and to fulfill this ultimate goal is that whenever your side hustle net income is greater than or equal to the financial lifestyle costs of your life, that is when you can go ahead and retire. Now, what this means is we'll end up putting in a financial number to this lifestyle cost. Let's say for you, it's $5,000. Whenever you can profit $5,000 or more per month from your side hustle, that's the right time, financially speaking, for you to actually go ahead and retire. Now, for me personally, I think I was able to reduce my lifestyle cost down to about $3,200, $3,400 per month. So as soon as I hit that mark, I actually went ahead and I took that leap of faith and I chose to retire because I knew that I could at least sustain my lifestyle as is, as in my car payment, my mortgage, groceries, entertainment fund, whatever it is that builds up to that lifestyle. That was the right time. So we'll end up building that here in a second, and I'll share some more stories. But we should really go into first for you, what does your lifestyle cost you? You can do this in 3 easy steps. The first one is to list out every expense that you pay per month on average. Step 2 is to calculate how much that expense costs you per month and to repeat. So take that list from step 1 and right next to it, add how much that actually costs you per month and just continue doing that until you've completed a list. Step 3, add up the total number that's on that list, and that's going to give you your lifestyle cost per month. That's how much it costs you to live your life per month happily. So for Sid, on the right side here, you can see this pie chart, which is Sid's lifestyle costs. He has about $1,500 in rent, $500 in groceries for his family, $300 for his car, $400 for daycare, $200 for entertainment, and so on. It's okay to add a miscellaneous fund, as you can see here. This is for stuff like gifts, cousin's birthday or your mom for Mother's Day, things that you don't really expect to happen or that are unexpected. To put a contingency fund there, that's okay to do. So all in all, this comes out to $3,450 per month, which is actually very similar to what I was paying, for my lifestyle. And this way, Sid now knows, all right, here's my goal. I need to be able to create $3,450 in net profit, net income, in order to sustain my lifestyle as it currently is. Now, this next part is a part of this lifestyle change that I keep talking about. It's something I did. It's not something that I honestly enjoyed doing, but I think it's going to allow you to reach that retirement goal in a very short amount of time. So what I want you to do, once you've calculated that number from step 3, go ahead and reduce it by 25%. To do this, take that number, multiply it by 0.75 or 75% to get what you're left with. That's taking 25% out. So for Sid, he went down, about $900 down to $2,588 is his target lifestyle. Now you may be thinking, there's no way I can do that. How do I take out $900 from my existing lifestyle when, I'm just making it by, I'm just paying my bills? I think it's more than realistic to ask for, and I do not want to take a whole lot of time on this, but I created this page in this handbook just to go over, we can actually do this, especially us as Americans. We have a very different lifestyle than the rest of the world. So I'm going to put things in perspective for you. Just imagine a world of Americans. I know many people from Europe and the UK right now and the rest of parts of the world are thinking, no way, that would be a terrible solution to anything to have a world full of us. But if you are an American, hear this out. This will put things in perspective for you. So some quick facts about our country. We have 331 million current Americans, according to the latest census. There's about 7.5 billion people in the world. So we make up a small percentage of the total globe, about 4% of the population. However, here's where things get very interesting. So the USA, we generate 40% of the world's waste. That's 10 times our population in comparison to the rest of the globe. We consume 18% of the world's energy. And if we did have this world full of Americans, 7.5 billion Americans, we would need a couple more Earths. And to be specific, we would need 4.2 to cover all the energy and the waste that is produced throughout our country. Now, the purpose behind all this is not to say that, Americans are terrible and all the waste that we generate, we need to really fix that. It's for you to understand that you can do this. 25% is honestly not a lot in comparison to the rest of the world. And we have many areas of opportunity to reduce our lifestyle costs. The other purpose is that, this is actually going to help create more happiness and fulfillment in your life. Psychological studies have shown that by reducing waste and less financial burdens on you, you're going to be a much happier person. So look to drive this down, reduce your overall lifestyle costs, and you're going to be able to obtain that retirement goal quicker. And then lastly, think about the financial liability, the risk. I'm always thinking about risks that I'm taking when I put in an investment into my company, or if I start a new side hustle. If your side hustle ends up failing, now you don't have to spend the whole 100% of your lifestyle since you reduced it down to 25% less. It's less of a liability overall. So go ahead. I know you can do it very quickly. Reduce it by 20%, and that's your new target. And we're going to be using that on how to actually get to that retirement goal. So there are two ways of looking at this. We can either increase our side hustle net income and keep our lifestyle costs stagnant, or we can reduce our lifestyle costs and keep our side hustle net income where it's at. Or we can do in conjunction, do both of them, which will end up showing you here on how to actually do all that. So the first thing, and these are all steps that I actually took, these 3 different methods. So let's first tackle lifestyle costs and to really understand what we can do to decrease that down to that 25% goal. Now, these 3 steps here, eliminate, reduce, track, are all things that I did personally in order to reduce my lifestyle costs well below 25% what it currently was at. The first thing I did was I eliminated all the extra coffee shop visits before work, the Netflix subscription that, I use once a week. I really didn't use a whole lot. I paid off all my debts. That is a cost. You are accruing interest that you're paying to the banks. If you can do that, it's a great investment on your part to invest into yourself. I took out all the unnecessary shopping, all the unnecessary traveling. Although traveling was very important to me, I found ways to, if I had to travel, I found ways to be more efficient, financially speaking. And you know what was great? By the time that I ended up eliminating a lot of these, I ended up forgetting about them. They weren't a part of my lifestyle anymore, and it wasn't something that I regretted or I thought about every day. I wish I could go shop for a new t-shirt. I wish I could watch that new episode of Netflix, because I became so accustomed to this new lifestyle and happier as a result, because I wasn't relying so much on material things or actual things to entertain me. I was finding ways to entertain myself in other ways and finding fulfillment in relationships. So it's going to be a little difficult at first, but I guarantee it's going to work out in your favor and your overall happiness in the long run. Now, the second one is to reduce. There are things that you can't necessarily eliminate. You need a car to get to your day job, to get groceries. Those are things that you need to reduce if you can, but you don't necessarily need to eliminate them. Reducing, so let's say you have a luxury car or a car that, you have a huge truck and you have no use for the truck, might as well just get a smaller car that's more, makes more logical sense. So those are some things to think about. Maybe get a smaller car, stop going to the Whole Foods and go to the Kroger or the Giant, something that isn't as expensive, but still produces, good quality. Rent, that is usually the biggest expense that anyone has, is their mortgage payment or their rent payment. Do you need the 4-bedroom house when, it's only yourself? Maybe downsize to a 2-bedroom house or a 1-bedroom. And that's going to save you a lot of money in the long run. And you can use that money to invest and to reduce your overall lifestyle cost. Lastly, you do not need the latest smartphone. You can use the same phone for a couple years. You don't always have to have the latest technology or, possibly the biggest TV. Those are all things that you can reduce. And lastly, here's tracking. This first one is an app called Toshl, Toshl. It's a budgeting app that I personally use. I would track every expense, and I mean every expense, just to make sure that I understood how much I was spending each month. That way I could reflect at the end of the month to say, hey, I overspent. My lifestyle cost actually isn't this. I'm not going to be able to meet this target. I got to reduce further. I have to eliminate more stuff. It's a great way to actually track it, because if you're not tracking your budgeting or your spending, you're going to honestly have no idea how much it's going to be. It's too large of a number. There are some other apps down here. Mint is a very popular app. Find an app that you really enjoy, that's easy for you to use. Some of them are free. Some do cost some money if you want to integrate it with your bank account, but you have to track it some way in one shape or another. So now that we have all the tools that we need in order to reduce our lifestyle costs by eliminating, reducing, and tracking, let's take a look at Sid's lifestyle and see if we can further reduce it. And we're going to look at the example here on the right. As you recall, Sid's lifestyle currently costs $3,450, and then we set that goal of $2,588. That was 25% reduced from that total value. So after Sid went ahead and he eliminated some of the unnecessary expenses and reduced some and tracked it throughout the entire process, he was actually able to exceed his goal and was able to change his lifestyle to $2,400 per month. As you can see here, he reduced his rent. So let's say that he got a smaller apartment for himself and his kids. Went down from $1,500 to $1,150. Groceries went down by $100. Car nearly cut in half. So let's say he got a smaller vehicle that made more sense. Daycare was something that he wanted to keep the same. So there are going to be things that you aren't willing to budge on, or that you cannot eliminate or reduce, and that is entirely fine. For this example, he wanted his kids to have the same daycare and nothing to change in their lives. So those are decisions that you have to make on where and when you can actually eliminate and reduce expenses. But trust me, you can definitely do this. You can definitely reduce it by 25%. And here is a prime example. So that's one way of meeting our goal of retirement in a quicker amount of time. The other way that we can actually accelerate this process is to increase our side hustle net income. There are two main methods that I see as the easiest way to actually accelerate this process, focusing on increasing your net income with your side hustle, and they're going to actually factor into our formulas that we took a look at during our finance section. So method one is simply a higher margin, higher profit margin yields a higher income. That is a direct relationship, and our equations also support that. Now, in order to do this, as I mentioned previously, the easiest way to do this is to reduce your expenses and to decrease any waste in production. Reduce expenses, remember, our cost of goods sold, utilities, taxes, all of those things that come into creating the product or the service that we are providing through our side hustle. Reduce those time and time again using the continuous improvement cycle. Waste is also a byproduct of a production cycle. So if you can eliminate waste or to recycle waste back into your product or your service, that is ultimately going to reduce your expenses and produce a higher margin and income. The second thing that I want to note here is that margin is dependent on the ratio between our expenses to revenue. So always keep this in the back of your mind. If you want to yield a higher margin, reduce your expenses and increase your overall revenue. Therefore, you're going to have a higher margin. That's the relationship that breaks down this equation right here. Method two is a different way of looking at it. If we're able to generate more revenue, therefore we can generate more income, net profit. So utilize advertising is a technique that I've used in every single one of my side hustles that have allowed me to increase my volume of sales or possibly increase the number of paying patrons for my services. Those are ways that you can increase artificially the volume of sales or the amount of customers that you may have. Advertising, I love digital advertising using Google AdWords. For my Amazon business, I use Amazon pay-per-click PPC, but also think of different avenues. You can go to social media and ask for influencers to advertise your product or your service. Maybe you can place an advertisement in the newspaper because you have a smaller town and that is what your town predominantly reviews for up and coming opportunities. So think about those things to increase your volume of sales. And remember in the back of your head, just like in method one, there's something you should always keep in your mind. The ROI equation, it's going to help you to figure out what is actually working. If you're investing money into your business in different ways, use the ROI equation to determine what is the most efficient way of investing into your company and into yourself. If you're focusing on areas that do not provide or yield a high ROI, then it's not going to be efficient and you're not going to be able to generate more revenue and therefore more income. The higher the ROI, again, the better. So let's go to the right side of the book here, and the question that I want to pose to you and also to Sid, how much does Sid have to produce in order to attain this goal of actual retirement? If you know a couple different things about your profit margin and your lifestyle cost, it's very easy to understand what that revenue looks like in order to actually get your side hustle income to what it needs to be. We'll end up taking the profit margin equation and we'll look at what we know. We currently know our profit margin per product sold for Sid, which was 42%. Remember, we discussed that in the finances section. And then our net income is our lifestyle cost goal. So this is what we want our net income to be at the end of the month. That way we can sustain our new lifestyle that Sid set for himself. Previously the goal was $2,588, so we'll keep it at that. But remember, Sid was actually able to decrease his lifestyle down to $2,400. So the lower that your lifestyle costs are, the lower that your net income has to be each month. So what we're going to be taking a look at here is what is the revenue that we need to generate, and then ultimately for Sid, how many products does he have to sell each day and each month in order to meet this goal. So we'll end up plugging these numbers into the equation. 42% is our profit margin. It equals our net income of $2,588, all divided by our revenue, multiplied by 100. Now you do some quick math there, and we're able to find out that our revenue needs to meet $6,162 per month for Sid in order to sustain his lifestyle and to ultimately retire and live off of this income. Now, what's great here is that we can break this goal down even further, which is what I ultimately did for my own side hustle. I broke it down into a goal that was day by day. I figured out, all right, I want to make this much a year. I divided that by 365 days a year to get how much money I actually had to generate each and every day. And what's beautiful about this is that it was such a small number once you broke it down for what I actually needed to do to sustain my lifestyle. I believed it, I think it was between $60 to $80 per day I had to make. And when I started looking at it like that, that's all I had to make per day. I can definitely do that. And that will ultimately build up to your overall goal of sustaining your lifestyle. So for Sid in this case, divide the $6,162 of revenue by $89.99, which is our sales price per drawing for Sid. And you'll end up getting 68 drawings per month. Break that down even further, we end up getting 2.27 drawings each day. So that is Sid's goal now, is to sell 2.27 drawings per day, or rounding up in this case, you'd want to sell at least 3 drawings per day, and he'd be able to exceed his revenue goal, and therefore he'd be able to exceed his net income goal to sustain his lifestyle. So now we can see it all come back into full circle. We know our goal of what we need to sell in our side hustle each day and each month in order to actually meet our retirement goal and to sustain our lifestyle. So at this point, Sid's improved his life by reducing his lifestyle costs. He now has a profitable side hustle that was continuously improved upon in order to meet this goal of 68 drawings per month. All Sid has to do now is to follow this routine schedule that he set for himself, continue reinvesting profits back into his business in order to actually get to that goal of selling 68 drawings per month. At that point, he can go ahead and he can retire and he can begin enjoying life as he ultimately wanted to. Wow, so at this point, you've gone from finding your side hustle, setting it up, the whole way to actually retiring, all just within that short amount of time. If you're watching this video later on and you're coming back maybe just to see some of these expert tips that we're about to take a look at, I want to congratulate you because you went the entire cycle and you've actually put these skills to practice, which many have not. So let's get into the expert tips. That way you can really capture this all into one main lesson. And these are some of the most important tips that I want to give you because it's a lot of reflection I've done on my part now that I'm self-employed and I'm retired from my corporate job of what actually success is and what happiness is for you. So the first one is exactly on that topic, and that's to evaluate your success based on your happiness, not external factors. This was something that, I struggled a lot with early on, being in my early 20s, and social media being such a major influence on my definition of success. I looked at external factors of how people were successful, the money they would generate, how much money you needed to be successful. And that's really what I was focused on. And it ultimately wasn't what was making me happy. So later on, once I found out that, having time to spend with others, with family members, with friends, and be able to do what I actually wanted to run my own business, that's where I found my happiness, regardless of the monetary amount that I was bringing in each month. The second is to keep your lifestyle costs relatively constant in relationship to your side hustle income. So as your side hustle income begins to grow, which is going to be a great thing, go ahead and try to keep that lifestyle at the same level financially. Now, this means as you have more money coming in, do not go out and buy the Maserati or do not go out and buy the Ferrari maybe, or the bigger house. Try to keep your lifestyle relatively constant, and that more income that you produce, either reinvest back into the business or reinvest into some portfolio that you can get long-term growth, because that is how you actually gain financial wealth, is over time. The third point ties into what we just discussed, and that is to invest early on and as much as possible. The third point ties into what we just discussed, and that's to invest as much as you can early on and as early as possible. Now, that can mean reinvesting into your business, or it can mean just investing money into a stock portfolio or crypto, whatever it may be. My main point and what I want to drive home to you is that the earlier that you do this, you're going to have compound interest work in your favor, and over time, you're going to generate that wealth compoundly and exponentially, which is how you actually create substantial wealth over time. The fourth one is an emergency fund. I've always had an emergency fund in my back pocket in case, some large healthcare expense came up or something, or possibly, I lost my corporate job. I recommend having at least 3 times your monthly expenses. So when we went ahead and we created your lifestyle costs, multiply that number by 3, and that is how much you should have saved up for the unexpected. The last 2, retire once you met your income goal for 3 to 6 months. Now what I mean by that is just because you met your lifestyle cost goal with your side hustle income doesn't mean you should retire that following month because you did it. That could be an outlier. It could just be a really good month. Wait until you have some consistency behind you. I'd say after 3 to 6 months, you're going to be able to sustain that over time and you're good to go. And lastly, enjoy your retirement every day. Go out and say yes to more things. Go out and have fun and see people that you haven't seen in a while. Do not be so focused on your side hustle or your job. This is a mindset that I had when I was working my corporate job, and it's all I was really focused on, especially Monday through Friday. It's very important for your happiness and your overall success of how you define it to go out and enjoy it, whatever it is that you're doing with your side hustle.